All right, now we're going to designate a quick portion of this presentation to permitting. Anybody who's familiar with environmental permitting in the state of Pennsylvania knows it can be pretty complex at times. And honestly, if we wanted to go in depth, this portion could probably be a few hours long. But out of respect for everyone's time, we're just going to going over the basics of what we need to know for the average, small stream project here in York County. And basically how we at the York County Conservation District's Watershed Department can help during this permitting process, and what's our role. So how can we help? So first of all, York County Conservation District is a great resource for any sort of permitting questions. If we don't know it, we could certainly point you in the right direction to the people who will know the answer to your question. Big three questions that we get are, do I need any permits? What permits do I need, and how do I get them? So kind of going to answer that first question. Do we need any permits? For in-stream work, yes. Anytime in-stream work is proposed in Pennsylvania, anytime there is obstructions going to be added into the stream, anytime the flow path of a stream is going to be manipulated, there's going to need permits. And anytime an obstruction or manipulation of the 100-year floodway is proposed, it will also need a permit. These permits kind of involve the big three, which is the Chapter 105 permits. Chapter 105 permits are there to make sure that you're following the law according to Pennsylvania Code's Chapter 105 Dam Safety and Waterways Management section. Another big one is Chapter 102 permits. Chapter 102 permits basically involve stormwater management of a construction site. So anytime you have disturbed earth due to a construction site, we want to make sure that if a rain event happens, that dirt doesn't go into the surrounding streams. Now, obviously, since these projects are right next to a stream, or a lot of times in the stream, Chapter 102 permits are going to be required, or Chapter 102 plans are going to be required for the majority of the work that we're doing. Another big one is the Federal Army Corps of Engineers permits. This one we see a little bit less with smaller projects, but we do see in some of our bigger projects. Most of the times, Chapter 105 permits kind of come with, if we do receive a permit issuance of Chapter 105 permits, they come along with the Army Corps of Engineers permits. So just to kind of discuss what in-stream refers to, and it's a 100-year floodway. In-stream is from bank to bank and the channel of the stream. Pretty self-explanatory. The floodway, or that 100-year floodway, consists of, if you were to get the stream and a big rainstorm hit, basically a rainstorm that is so big that it probably only happens once every 100 years, where would that water flood out to? That's also part of the Chapter 105 scope of things. And if you plan to do a project within that floodway, you'll need Chapter 105 permits. So it's not necessarily adding to the creek itself. It could be added to the floodway of that creek, and you still need the same permits as if you were adding to the creek. The main thing that that kind of designates the 100-year floodway is there's two things actually. It's one, the FEMA. FEMA has a map on their website. Basically, what we would do is any project area that we are looking to do work in, we get the GPS location, type in that GPS location into that map. A map that would look similar to this would pop up, and if it's within that blue and orange striped layer marked as floodway, then it's considered within the floodway, and we need Chapter 105 permits for that activity. If it's not, then we don't need Chapter 105 permits, and probably all we'll need is that Chapter 102 plan or permit. This really only works for kind of bigger streams, bigger waterways, kind of like the Cadorus or the Conewago. Anytime we kind of work through in smaller like headwater type streams, the FEMA floodway map isn't that in detail. So what we have to do is use the 50-foot assumed floodway. This is basically when we get the bank of each bank of the creek, measure back 50 feet. That's what the state considers the 100-year floodway. Because this is relatively unscientific, it's more of like a rule of thumb. This 50-foot assumed floodway can be rebutted if there's proof that 50 feet from the bank is not part of the floodway. We can present that to the DEP, and then they could decipher whether or not we'll need a permit or not. But a lot of times this does require an engineer's stamp of approval, and whenever an engineer is involved, it kind of makes the rebuttal more expensive than just getting the permit. So that kind of has to be weighed out, whether or not the bark is worth the bite. So how can the York County Conservation District help? Well, first off, the York County Conservation District is not Chapter 105 delegated. Pretty much we have to do the same thing to get a general permit as anybody else. We have to go and send it to the South Central Regional Office of DEP, where they review the permits and issue the permits to us or the landowner. But what we can do, we can't review and issue it. But what we can do is we go out on site before we develop an application for what permits are needed, and we can decipher if your project is exempt of any of these permits. There's different avenues that we can do to try and get away with not needing a written down piece of paper to do a project. Big thing that we see is here in York County is one of the waivers is if the drainage area to that point in the creek is under 100 acres, then we don't need a written permit to do the projects. Now it still has to follow under Chapter 105 rules and guidelines. We can't destroy the whole creek, but it just means that we don't need to go through the few month-long process of getting an application together and getting written approval by the state. So we can go out there, take a look at take a look and see if the area where you want to do a project is applicable for waivers or not. What we can do then is if it is not applicable for waivers and a permit is needed, we'll kind of discuss what kind of permits we're going to be looking at. We'll go over, what type of activities you want to do in the creek, and then according to what activity we can match it to the permit. And then we could kind of point you in the right direction how to produce and obtain these permits. So the York County Conservation District Watershed Department, we're just dabbling into the permit application, development process right now. We're kind of looking to provide that service with to the landowners here in York County. But we're kind of still in the infant stages of that. A lot of times what happens is when people, we go on the sites and we know that there's going to be permits involved, we have a contractors list, and we will provide that contractors list to the landowner. The landowner can then contact one of those contractors. They could develop the correct permits needed for the project. So, and regarding the Chapter 102 permits for earth disturbance, York County Conservation District is Chapter 102 delegated. We can point you in the right direction on what type of plans or permits are need to be produced for the project scope. And then we can go and provide you with a contractor, or we can provide you with the right the correct materials to develop your plan. If it's a small project, a lot of times a handwritten plan will be accepted by the conservation district. So it's not like you need to get a contractor all the times, but if it goes over a certain threshold, engineering is required, and we can get you in contact with the right people to develop your plan. And then at that point, that contractor, you would send it over to our erosion sediment control staff, where they would review and then issue whatever permits or plans are needed. Just to discuss what we're kind of looking at for permits and for ENS plans, the parameters. So a lot of the big 105 permits that we get into for these smaller projects, kind of like backyard projects, we like to call them, are general permits. These are the cheapest and kind of the easiest to apply for in the state. And we like to try and do our best to keep our projects within the thresholds of a general permit. So a big one is fish habitat enhancement structures. We use those for a lot of like our in-stream, best management practices, like grade breaks and different rock piles and stuff to slow down the water. General permit 3 is here: bank rehabilitation, bank protection, and gravel bar removals. So this is anytime you want to riprap or you want to put a mud sill to stabilize the banks of your creek. Another big one is that we see is temporary road crossing. So a lot of times these projects, access is a big issue, and we need to create a temporary crossing to cross the creek with the machinery, so we can access the other side of the creek to do work. These are Chapter 105 permits. Here's a cool table that York County Conservation District's ENS team created. This is basically when we need ENS plans or permits. So anything under 5,000 square feet does not need a written ENS plan unless it's to apply for a general permit, as stated right there. So required by DEP Chapter 105 permit conditions. So if any one of these are applied to, then a small ENS plan will have to be written for this project, just to make sure that any sort of mud developed during the construction of these BMPs doesn't wash into the creek and pollute the creek further. We're trying to save the creek, not damage it any further. And this kind of holds us liable to that. This is how the state holds us liable to that. And then anytime there's a 5,000 square feet disturbed area, just under an acre, that's just underneath an acre, an ENS plan is required, just like before. And then when you get over an acre, that's when it gets a little bit more difficult. That is when a MPDS permit is required. That requires engineering approval. And what we like to try and do is keep it under that 5,000 square feet, under that 5,000 square feet to 1 acre threshold. Anytime it goes over that 1 acre, then it becomes more headaches for us. So basically, if you have any questions regarding permitting, have us come out. We will go over all this, and we can discuss what the best avenue for this project is to do this in a timely and economic manner.